what makes you tick? Like, what are your motivations? Like, why do you tweet the way you do?
Thanks for asking. Yeah, I appreciate the question. December 2020, everybody was locked down, everybody was isolated. I've got my son half-time, so it was kind of, I would have these long stretches with zero, not seeing anyone. And so I was trying to do like mini meditation retreats, and I hit a wall because I was grappling with some real difficult stuff at the time. And I decided I'm getting rid of all my social media. Like, I don't want any of this, I don't want to think anyone else's thoughts. I just want my own, space. And that quickly became so isolating that I made a compromise with myself. And I said, all right, I'm gonna get off all the social media, but I'm gonna make a new Twitter account that's just gonna be for following contemplatives and meditative people, so that I can like talk to them about stuff that's going on, Yeah. And so I started that, and then Twitter's algorithm tried to really kind of pull me back to my old, accounts and my old, like, where I was fighting a lot with people about politics and ideology and these kinds of things. And eventually, in some weird intersection of contemplatives and this old kind of milieu that I was part of, Eigen Robot was there. And I posted something on one of his replies, and he was like, come here. You should be over in this area over here. And then pretty soon I was, feelings posting with Chao Chu and Visa, and Visa gave me, a huge boost early on, like said, hey, everybody, like, this guy's worth paying attention to. And I was just writing about stuff and processing stuff, and just like everybody else was, and learning incredible amounts of different perspectives and metamodernism and all this. And it felt like freshman year of college all over again. Like, my brain was just like buzzing, it was pretty wonderful.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah. And then, and that just kind of snowballed, and I just kind of kept posting and kept writing about my experience. And then that just kept going and going and going until like July of this year, I said, I think I want to try coaching and see if I can help other people, like, with their practices or with their problems. And then that became full-time within like a month. And I was like, okay, here we go. And it's been amazing. It's been an amazing ride. Cool. Yeah.
Okay. Awesome. Gosh. Yeah.
Did I answer what makes me tick? I don't know if I did that.
No,
yeah,
that's great. That's good. That's real cool. Okay. I don't even know where to take this. Like, I was gonna just briefly comment that I sort of hit the ground running, kind of doing coaching type stuff as well. And it was a little bit surprising. And I'd sort of been doing blogging type stuff and writing, and for about maybe, like, I'm terrible with dates, like maybe like 5+ years before that. And it sounds like you sort of have less of like a backlog or overhang or something like that. I don't know. That's cool. That's just like cool. Interesting.
I think one of the things that kind of supercharged me, because this did happen faster than it did for a lot of people. And one of the reasons for that, I think, my mentor was a Roshi at the local Zen monastery, but he was also a psychotherapist.
Okay.
And I mentored under him for 5 years. And so a lot of what I tweet about and write about is about the problems with therapy and I mean, good things about therapy and good therapy versus bad therapy and these sorts of things. And also just what psychology, what's good about Western psychology, sort of I call it outsider psychology. how it can be used, and how there's still like a lot of vitality in it. And so I think that when offering coaching, maybe I'm being a little too florid here, but
No, that's fine.
I offered coaching to people, and a lot of that it's life skill stuff, and a lot of it's psychological stuff. I'm not working with disorders, but it's helping people with behavior change.
Yep.
And I think just having the root and the education in that, and with what a therapist shortage there is in the country right now, with the mental health crisis being what it is, I think that's probably when I said, hey, I've got life coaching and I don't do therapy, but I do probably 80% of what a therapist does. Then people were just like, like, because people just need help right now. It's, it's bad out there.
Yep. Yeah. I was looking for somebody licensed for somebody that I know. And it was shockingly hard to find anybody, let alone like somebody that like seemed, I don't know, especially good or something like that.
Yeah.
And it does seem like there's an insane shortage of like licensed practitioners out there. The other thing I was thinking, like just kind of reading through tweets and stuff, was that I guess I've never sort of felt like a popular blogger, tweeter, teacher or something. And so I'm always fascinated by just when people seem to be able to speak to kind of a larger number of people. I always feel like I'm like almost like doing something wrong, where like I'm almost like pretending to be popular or something, and then like people like come into contact with my stuff, and like there's like this friction where it's like this isn't going to make me friends, or like this isn't part of like a wider cultural thing. And so kind of like bridging that gap has kind of always been of interest to me, and I feel like I'm like slowly like popularizing my material, teaching, whatever. But I just always look on with fascination when people have thousands of followers on Twitter, or like have just really accessible like material and tweets and writing and stuff like that. I guess it's more of a comment than a question or anything. I don't know if that sparks anything for you, if that's interesting, or because you said you were just kind of writing your thoughts and like yeah,
it's kind of you to say. I'm surprised by it myself. I don't, I don't I mean, I've got like a bachelor's in literary theory from the Evergreen State College. It's not like I'm like I've got some incredible pedigree or something, training in this kind of thing. It's I think your book, which I will confess I have not read all of, but I have read many parts of, really like really speaks to the people that it speaks to at a depth that I'm never going to be capable of with my reach. Like the focus, the people that I'm like, the audience that I speak to, generally speaking, are like people who are getting started, people who are working through it's people who are getting started. It's people who are building practices. It's people who are meditating for the first few years. Occasionally, like I have a Discord, and a lot of people talk about meditation there. And occasionally somebody will come in and they'll be like, I'm having, this like extremely arcane difficulty between, third and fourth jhana and etc. And I'll just, and I'll have to be like, when we start getting into that territory, I don't have the language or the expertise in that area. I've sat for very long periods of time, and I think I've had some pretty significant experiences, and I can follow when people talk about it, but I can't talk about it. And you have this ability to like, I don't mean, I know I can see you want to speak. I just want to tell you, like,
no, yeah.
Your metaphor about technical debt, I have used, I don't know how many times now in helping people understand. Like we're we're doing two roles, we're doing two things in an ecosystem.
Yeah,
You know what I
no,
mean?
totally. I mean, I was laughing because like if someone has this incredibly subtle, arcane, like N of one kind of weird meditation thing going on or whatever, I'm like, yes, okay, like
Yeah, yeah,
tell me more. And like let's, over like a month, let's like every time we meet, let's like talk about this in greater detail. Like not for its own sake, because I don't care about it for its own sake. I'm interested in like debottlenecking, like it's for a purpose. But then when somebody has uh my expertise or whatever is like super limited, when somebody's like, oh yeah, like I'm sort of just getting started, and like I'm having trouble kind of maintaining a practice or something. um I have like a repertoire. I'm like, oh, like be really gentle, and like here's some things that like worked for me, and like you can kind of like set a timer, and like don't make yourself sit during that time, but whatever. But it's like really limited. It's like I just, yeah, all my weight is like on like weird arcane stuff, and so it's just, I don't know, it's just funny, like I have to refer people to other people. um and and that's like totally fine. Like it's just different kind of weightings. Like I can't help people for a whole class of things. um so yeah, that's just funny.
yeah. I'm glad. I'm really glad there's um. Well, I'm really glad for people like you. I'm really glad for people who are doing those deep dives and getting in there.
I appreciate
The I was thinking about this when I was um doing some work on oh, I don't want to say branding because it's not really that, but I was sort of looking at mission and vision and those sorts of things when I was getting the coaching going. And one of the things that I realized as I was going through was like how important the idea of building a network of practitioners and a network of people that you can rely on, and that you can, like making not just, spiritual friendship is the whole of the divine life, or whatever the Buddha quote is. I don't remember right now, but also just because we there's no way to specialize in one lifetime in all of these different things. There's no way to do that. And so like building this kind of fabric, building this big network where, I know if somebody's got this problem and they think in this way, it's like, oh, Mark's your guy. And like knowing that we've got those connections, that seems to me like a really crucial part of whatever this practice ends up being.
Yeah, and I think there's something so hard there, and I still like don't understand the pattern of when somebody will make a claim or an assertion, or will like reach out on Twitter with like the wrong tone or vibe or something, and the other person experiences like word salad, or they experience like, wow, like this person's is or is going to hurt people. And like uh, this is another thing that partly through having conversations like this is another thing that I'm trying to work through, like how to actually build those bridges. Like it sounds like kind of a cliche, but across very different ways of assessing value, like very different audiences, where the same person can be great for some people but hurt other people. And then how do you assess that? Like how do you figure out when somebody's gonna maybe hurt a whole lot of people, but like yeah, it just seems really hard.
Yeah.
So yeah,
Yeah, that is really hard. That's a good, I don't know how much.
kind of a dark turn to the conversation. I don't know.
I don't know. That's okay. That's okay. I think about this sometimes because I still shit post a lot.
Yeah.
Sometimes I'll write, sometimes I'll put a meme out that's making fun of something, or I made fun of like integral theory the other day. which is like the point, you know, it was funny because it's close to people's hearts, but also, you know, you can't help but wonder, like, you know, did I just turn somebody off of something that was going to be really important to them? You know, and then at some point, I mean, and that kind of stuff can happen. And a lot of the people that we're working with are strange. I'm strange, and you know, I don't know if you're strange, but I sure am. And I know a lot of the people
Yeah.
yeah. So we start this way, and there's a not insubstantial amount of people who are hypersensitive who get into meditation because you're going to be good at it anyway. You know, with the hypersensitivity, but you're starting off at a place of, you know, like people probably they introject a lot of stuff they read online. And then the question is like, what is your responsibility there? You know, can you trust people, you know, to hold things lightly, and can you trust people to say this teacher isn't right for me and I've got to go? Or I'm not sure. I'm not actually sure how to draw these boundaries, because you know, you could see somebody who's like grossly mispracticing and going around, you know, doing guru stuff and you know, soliciting transference and these kinds of things. You know, you want to boot those people out. You know, yeah, but I don't know. I think it's sort of a situation by situation basis. You know,
I think it's sort of like a radically contextual kind of muddling through. As with anything, like I wish it could be systematized, and there's probably like criteria and stuff, but like especially kind of in this space where everything is like so weird and edge casey and nebulous and barely conceptual. Maybe it just has to be kind of a muddly case by case thing. Interesting. I'm gonna be right back.
yeah, okay.
I have the temperature really low in here because I'm experimenting with like a thermogenesis thing. But you're supposed to like keep it above shivering, and I'm like starting to shiver and I'm gonna like get all twitchy. So I'll just be right back.
Okay.
Let's see if this makes things better. One of the things that I noticed, and this was just from your tweets, you almost have like a different vibe, like kind of in real time. There was sort of like in almost like every single tweet, like there was this like subtle composure and like sort of stillness. And does that resonate at all? Do you something's just very composed, like in a way that doesn't feel artificial, and something's like very still. That's just the vibe I got just from your writing, even in just
interesting.
Even just in like single tweets, like atomically, like somehow.
That feels like a kind thing to say. I feel quite passionate when I'm writing. Usually it's emotion that drives me to tweet. I'm rarely like in a place of like just chillness.
That's really fucking weird. That's really fucking weird. Yeah, I don't know. I'm like, am I projecting something onto his tweets? Like, cool. I'm gonna have to go back now and like reread some.
I am glad that your stillness is reflected to you in my tweets, though. That's good. About the last thing we were talking about, something that has occurred to me, and I wouldn't even know how to get this started, you know, in an effective way, but I had a conversation with someone about the importance of like one thing that's really important about that therapists have that a lot of like coaches and meditation teachers and art type of folks who are kind of on the outside don't, is we are not accountable to a larger body of practitioners who can keep us accountable for malpractice and who can keep us accountable, you know, and a lot of us don't have supervisors that we're running problems against, you know, and in the case, you know, for instance, if somebody comes in who's got a serious psychological disorder, I tell them I can coach them, but I can't treat those symptoms. And And I mean, it would be unethical, of course. But
Legal, yeah.
yeah. But I wonder too, when we talk about limiting harm, and those sorts of things, I wonder what sort of voluntary body or something we could conceivably put together that said, like, here's some best practices. And, you don't have to do this, but if you're gonna get into this space, like, here are some of your responsibilities to clients. Here are some of, if you start seeing this stuff, like, this is dangerous. If you start, it's just things with, like, I don't know, maybe just basic transference and countertransference stuff, to kind of maybe stop somebody who otherwise, like, doesn't want things to get culty or doesn't want things to become a guru dynamic. I guess, which is fine. If I don't want to beat up too much on gurus and guru people, it's not for me. But yeah, I don't know. It seems like maybe if there were enough of us, Twitter types or social media types who put something like this together, that maybe it was just a resource that helped improve the quality of other coaches and practitioners, then that would be good. And I don't know if we could. I don't know. Again, I wouldn't even know how to start administering this type of thing, but I think that's something that would benefit all of us.
Yeah, I think it's really interesting to talk about, at the very least, like, just an ongoing conversation that kind of keeps these ideas alive and sensitizes people. It's not an institution, and because it's not like an institution, there's always a danger of that resonance, that whatever reverberation kind of dying out. But then also institutions have their sort of own issues.
Mm-hmm.
One thing that I found difficult personally is that I've never done sort of like life coach training or whatever, but also, like, I'm not like a part of a lineage, and I've noticed that some people who kind of come from a lineage, like a wisdom tradition or meditation type thing, sometimes can kind of like rely on those institutions or structures or networks of teachers to kind of have like a sounding board or checks and balances or something. Or people who sort of not start with a lineage, but manage to legitimately affiliate themselves with the lineage, kind of have been able to get something like that. So I'm sort of drawing from examples that, like, I don't want to name or something. But for myself personally, like, I haven't managed to successfully affiliate yet, but I'm still looking for a way to kind of bridge that.
Something it really aligns with my own ethos there, and something my mentor just ground into my head was that there is no system, there is no tradition, there is no anything that will get you where you want to go. The only path is whatever's in front of your face right now. And any, and that's not to say that, like, and so, I mean, what he really wanted me to do was put it in my own words, really map the thing out for myself, and just starting from my own ontology, my own, just everything from sense data, period, put it together, which is brutally hard, and but I think something that's been so useful about Twitter and Teapot and all this stuff over the last year and a half has been so much exposure to different lineages and different practitioners and that sort of thing, because I've been, it's a strange thing where somebody explains some concept that they understand in their terminology, and then you kind of quiz them a little bit about it. You're like, I know exactly what you're talking about, but I never would have had words for it. It's just this thing that happened to me for 4 months that, and you sort of, the vibe, right? I think that can be, maybe that could be helpful if you've already got a system, or not, maybe not a system, but if you've already got the experience to go and look at somebody else's system and be like, oh yeah, look at how he put that together. Like, that's super interesting. I think would be good. But, you know, whenever, I don't know, whenever anybody, I don't mean to dissuade you from it. You know, I technically have like a lineage, and I mean, sort of, you know, it's like Western, I mean, it's Western psych. My mentor was trained by Aaron Beck at the Aaron Beck Institute, who, you know, did cognitive behavioral theory, and then also was a creative writing student of Bob Persig at the University of Montana, who wrote Zen and the Art of Motorcycle Maintenance. And that kind of came down to me.
Okay.
Yeah. So you know, this isn't exactly like transmission or anything like this, but these are just the teachers of my teachers. Yeah. Where things came down. But in terms of, what's that?
Provenance, causal history, something. It's still interesting.
Provenance.
Yeah, tracing back.
I think that I just don't think, I don't know. I think that for me, I'm always going to have to build my own thing. And I'm always going to have to figure it out myself. You know, it's like,
yeah, I'm the same way. Like, it's possible that you know, even if I become sort of no longer pathologically anti-authoritarian, like, it's possible that I'm going to sort of remain, like, you know, anti-authoritarian in some deep way, where it's just like, it's not going to be the right use of my time for my little project, or but yeah, that's interesting.
well, I also wonder too, there's a point at which ritual and routine and practice are really excellent until they're not.
Yeah.
And I think if you're past that, then I'm not sure what submitting to reconditioning would do for me.
Right.
You know?
Yeah. But I don't know. I'm just trying to weave the threads of the conversation together. Like, yeah, I don't know. Legitimacy and safety and structure and accountability, and but then, you know, you have structurelessness and nebulosity and aconceptuality, and, like, I don't know, individuality might be the wrong word, but yeah, I don't know. How does all this sort of fit together, and how do you kind of keep all of that alive or something? Like impermanence or whatever, yes, but you know, the pattern can kind of keep going longer than something. Interesting. Yeah, I don't know, something's tickling my brain. I don't know, feel free to just go anywhere.
I don't know the answer either. You know, I floated the idea of a retreat center back in September, which is kind of a cool idea, but then we're talking about institutionalizing something that most of us just, you know, don't do well in institutions with if we were institutional people, we would be in institutions kind of thing, you know?
Right. Totally.
So I'm not sure that that's the answer. Like, and I don't know what that looks like. I don't know, you know, I'm almost 40. That was just to say I can't change, but I've been like this for a long time, and I'd be surprised if suddenly, you know, I became a church man, you know?
No, totally. It's interesting. I think I'm 42. I have to think about it. Yeah, I'm interested in maybe like how much people can change, and like I think that something personality, something gender, it's like people do, I think, like, have these propensities, like, even though there's tremendous like malleability on top of it. And it's like, you know, I'm like a weird sort of systematizer, you know, analytical, but like also I have this like relational thing that it's very difficult for me to like kind of build like abstract things for people to kind of like be in or something. It's like I can do it, but like it doesn't like nourish me in a particular way. And so it's like I guess maybe we need to find people who like to do institution building, but like also like uh we like don't hate or something.
Somebody
um
who can sort of hold it lightly, maybe.
yeah, maybe something like that. That at least for me, that doesn't like trigger my like authoritarian allergy or something like that. um it's like uh yeah, but it's like maybe they're already off building things, or like there's this gap where if someone's even kind of institution building at all, it's like yeah. Maybe a counterexample, the like Olympic people, uh
Yeah.
like so like and I can't, I don't have like a good survey, but I'm like they're the only people maybe that I can think of right now, that seem to be on face like doing a really cool thing that is kind of bridging the structure and nebulosity thing. But why aren't there more? And maybe there are, I just can't, I don't know how to see them. So yeah.
Yeah, I don't know either. It does seem like they're filling a niche that I should say I just met Katie a couple of weeks ago when I was in San Francisco. And we had a delightful conversation. Um,
We've
and
we've
I just it's like, you know her.
yeah, we've talked a bit.
I learned an immense amount in just talking with her for like an hour and a half. It was great. Um, so kind of, I don't know. I've tried a few times to do informal thing. I had a Burning Man theme camp for a long time. I went to Burning Man for like 10 years, and
Okay.
organizing communities around a fun art project in a lot of ways. Burning Man is sort of organized around the orgiastic mode of transcendence, sex and drugs, but really finding the infinite via the Dionysian. And when people say, "Oh, it's culty," or it's kind of a religious element, it's like you get there and no, there's not. But then you can't, you walk away feeling like, oh, something religious did happen there, and I'm not sure what that was. And
Yeah.
there is that, that transcendence is out there, and it is extremely meaningful to a lot of people. And just so when you organize something around that, and where people invest so much meaning in that, you well, I guess I should just say, I guess I learned a lot about communities, and I learned a lot about bringing people together and in your backyard and trying to make something happen. And it's extraordinarily hard without a building and a brand and a story and an
Yeah.
institution, because it's like, because people just won't invest
Hmm.
practical identity. They won't invest that's it. They won't invest practical identity in what you're doing.
Nice.
um and I think that's the thing that keeps people coming back, ultimately.
Yeah.
uh yeah.
Yeah. I like that. I like that. And like I, at least with my own material, I called it meditation stuff. Like it had to be like amorphous. Like I couldn't be contained. Um, and it's cool that you have done some like, boots on the ground organizing, even if it sort of had like an unbranded quality or something. I have done a ton of like online community building, which is like super real. It's like affected people, and like, it's added something to people's lives. But I still sort of hunger for like more immanentization. Like I do want
Yeah.
more stuff on the ground, but I also like, I don't want to manage a building. I don't want to,
Right.
you know,
Yeah.
I tried for a little while to be part of organizing like a legal nonprofit, and I'll probably get there eventually, but I couldn't. It was too much imposition of structure in a way that like just sort of didn't feel right at the time, and yeah, so just I think I'll just sort of keep, little by little, kind of eking out something that feels right. But it does feel like something's missing still. So yeah.
Yeah, I have a lot of fears around. It's sort of ironic. Like just before I started Twitter, so I really liked Slate Star Codex, which so I think what brought a lot of us there. But especially the comment section, because it was like, where else on the internet could you find a bunch of people who were metacognition nerds? You just didn't find that, and that was it. Until Teapot, right? And then, but just before that, I was really concerned. I was really concerned about the real. I was worried about, the real and the hyper real, and I was very kind of in this, Baudrillardian terror about sort of inability, not my own, but just like seeing so many people's struggles with accessing what was their own organic context of their life. Like they were so wrapped up in the characters of media and these things that they were tearing their own relationships apart, and it was breaking my heart. And so I conceived of this thing called Project Outgroup, which was like, I want to make like a retreat center, and it'll be like a safe, like an area that's a safeguarded kind of thing where, for permaculture and meditation, and it's just kind of skills to stay in touch with the real, skills to like increase people's capacity to just see things for themselves. And then I found Teapot and all of this, and I think I hope that my thinking has matured a lot since then, and in the last 2 years or so now. And I'm not opposed to the idea of doing something like this. I've thought of like having a gym that, I'm just like a proper gym that could do martial arts and do yoga and those sorts of things, and then also do classes and lectures, and kind of like the Alembic, but with kind of like an old the gymnasium, like in Athens. It's like you went there for education and to work out. I'm not opposed to this, or I'm not opposed to running something like that. I'm not opposed to starting something like that, but I would need a good team and an assurance that it wouldn't be all me. I would need like an assurance that it wouldn't be like carrying everything on my back, because I did that with Burning Man for a long time, and prior to that I had a publishing startup, and I wouldn't say I carried that on my back, but there were three of us that carried way too much on our backs for too long, and it was one of the most spiritually deleterious times of my life.
Interesting.
We were angry all the time, and we were scared all the time, and it was like and it's ultimately it's why I left, even though we were doing pretty well.
Yeah. Do you, just as a side note, like, do you feel like you grew a ton too, or did it just like destroy you?
No. It put paid to a part of me that it put a part of me. It finished an arc, and I was able to leave a lot of things behind.
Okay.
Because I proved something to myself.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Yeah.
Cool. I think something that always gives me pause is I feel like I'm leaving something out. So like you've been talking about kind of like metacognition, and then also in this idea you've been describing, you've been talking about getting in touch with like reality, or like, physical embodiment in addition to intellect and learning and spirituality. And I think like the Alembic is sort of organized around science, There's a strong thread of science running through it. And I always I'm sort of struggling to find like the sort of like a unifying theme that's like encompassing enough or something like that. Because I'm always just like, well, what about, and it's like the brand, the idea, the ideology, the memeplex. It's like it can't hold enough or something like that. Or maybe like I'm trying to make concepts or meaning do something that it can't or something like that. But I don't know. That's like one of the things that I struggle with. And then so I don't know. So that's one thing, which if that is interesting to you. And then the other thing,
Do you mean in the sense of organizing an institution around
yeah,
something? Yeah.
yeah, where it's like, yeah, like we need like an institution that sort of has like that has science running through it, but also like touches so much. And I think we need like an institution or whatever that uh you can work out like while you know do other stuff, and it's like it's not separate. um and then I'm just like okay, it's like what does that leave out, or like what does it make it harder to like have around the edges? And not to comment on the particular projects that I'm pointing at, but I'm always just like there's something missing. Um and um um and maybe like it has something, so like there's sort of like the woke discourse like on Twitter, there's sort of like the trad discourse like on Twitter, and like um there's I think there's a lot of like LARPing and politicization, and kind of, but also like there's still like a thread of like something important there. um and yeah, I don't know. I don't know, I'm sort of rambling here. I'm like, are we like marginalizing like lineage traditions and like trying to like reinvent the wheel, but also like clearly there's something important here like science, but also like science like too easily becomes like scientism, and like
Yeah.
there's all sorts of other stuff that's important, and I don't know. Yeah, I don't know where I'm going with this, but yeah.
Yeah, I don't know either. It's there's a part of me that thinks that as soon as you institutionalize something, you've that's the original sin. Because now you've created something unmoving. It's kind of, it's almost like an act of idolatry.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah,
But
and that's a fear,
yep. But at the same time, like we hunger for it. We sort of want something to belong to, and like you know, we're making use of money and capitalism and computers and whatever just to even have this conversation. So like we're embedded in systems and structure like totally as well. So it's like maybe this gets into David Chapman's like kind of like metarational, we need like a metarational institution or something that can like operate upon itself at a fine grain with no remainder, and like completely like transform itself without like losing something, but also it can lose it and still like be a thing. And I don't know.
you snatch that right out of the relational space between us, because I feel like Chapman's been haunting our conversation for the last like 15 minutes or so. Yeah. I know, but I don't know if anybody's tried it yet. I know there's metamodernism is kind of like an avant-garde political thing happening in Europe. I'm supposed to talk to Rich Bartlett about that soon, but I don't know if it's Chapman's metamodernism. What that's great. I'm not sure. What I try to teach people in coaching is there's a time to be rational and a time to be irrational, and you should be good at both. You can be skilled at being irrational, and what I'm ultimately trying to do there is help people find the parts of themselves that are wrapped up in the institutional, the ideological, the identity, the story, and resituate those in their own experience and their own organic context. We're keyed in stage 4 to 5 type stuff typically, or 3 to 4 if necessary, but I don't have as many of those people. It's those people. I don't have as many people in that area of life, that time of life. It's a difficult thing. Everybody knows when you tell them that ideologies and these sorts of things are like tools that you can use in as you encounter situations, and you can be like, oh, I can use this lens or I can use this lens, and it may offer these different things. And if you catch somebody in a if you have a good relationship with them and they're relaxed, they will usually concede this, right? That we like freely move back and forth between rational and irrational epistemologies. But like getting someone to really live that way and put their meaning there is like a very difficult thing. And I think fundamentally that's what Chapman wants, sort of what he's sort of talked about is like a Keegan stage 5 institution that can self-transform, which theoretically would sort of circumvent the iron law of institutions and rot and sclerosis and a lot of the problems that that afflict institutions.
One of the things that I think is hard is maybe kind of but like design is like real labor, and then like embodied design is like sort of even more laborious or something like that. And so like it reminds me of if someone wants to be like a novelist or something, they have like 10 years or a lifetime to write their first novel, and they have like 11 months or something to like write their second novel. And it's like, I just sort of wonder, like, how can like design be continuous or something like that? Maybe it is like division of labor or something, where you do have one person sort of doing like this. I hate this word like strategy, but one person doing like high level strategy or design, and then like stepwise, like closer and closer to like implementation. And there's a lot of communication between like the various layers. But then you're sort of already talking about like 2 or 3 or 5 people, and it's actually, I think, really hard to get 3 to 5 people to kind of be moving forward together, and like that already sort of has to be like subsidized by already existing institutions like roads and money and or like a grant or a farm or something. And I think it's like a really hard problem, unless a lot of stuff has already kind of come together. But then you're sort of saying the right things to rich people, and it's already being constrained by whatever existing structures are in place that you're trying to get out of in the first place. And I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know either. There was something that we were talking about. The Alembic organizes around science. I have kind of a personal pet theory, which may or may not like catch on with anyone else, but the self psychology I think was pretty, when I think of self-psychology, to me, it feels analogous to the kind of yogic philosophy that was around at the time that the Buddha was practicing, when the Buddha was alive, which was this intense focus on the self. And, sort of Buddha's great innovation was to say, actually, there's no self, and that gives you a context to inhabit where you can see the self and you can study it with great clarity. But first you have to be this non-self. And then this, was a brilliant, brilliant innovation. But self-psychology sort of trickled down. It's sort of like, went through all these filters, and by the time it got to the mainstream, I think this is actually true of most Western psychology, it had been stripped of most of its vitality and truth and had become this kind of like solve a problem and perfect yourself with, et cetera, et cetera. And it was never really about, like, self-esteem was never about what the popular understanding of self-esteem is about. So much of like what people are working on, building scaffoldings to heal trauma, they're just building self-esteem. We just can't call it that anymore, because then people think it's a participation trophy and blah, blah, blah. They have all these like memes in their head, But the sort of vital, I'm not sure how to do that, but the vital ideas of self-psychology and the vital ideas of that sort of like, I guess, led to that construction, I think would make a fine basis for a new age institution that was meta-modern and that did want to kind of pull from lots of different traditions, because the idea would be a true strengthening of the self-concept, not a strengthening of the self-image, which is what we have now. But like, in self-psychology, a strong ego is one that is extremely small and tight and lean and almost impossible to destroy. And the idea is that this is like a core, it's not ego in the Buddhist sense. It's just ego in the sense of I, just saying I. Or in the sense of just the identificative mechanism, right? So this is hardwired in a human being for the social mode. Obviously you can that can get soft and it can, all that, but for you and I to communicate, we're going to have this self-concept, and it's going to have to mediate our interactions. And so to continue to work with that and to make that as small and lean and tight as possible, I think that offers a direction.
I think there's something really cool in what you're saying. Like, I'm probably going to butcher this, and just prior to our conversation, I was reading like a bunch of like critiques on Twitter of like sort of Western strip mining of like wisdom traditions, and I'm like fuck. But I would say, possibly foot and mouth, that one of the greatest like Western innovations or something was like individuality or autonomy or independence or sovereignty or something like that of the self or something like that. And much was gained and also much was lost. And yeah, like maybe there's a way to kind of take that innovation and heal it, and yeah, like maybe like we're just not done with kind of getting the good stuff out of like that, and yeah, maybe it's a way to kind of like heal all the messed up stuff at the bottom of like Western Cartesianism or something. Like if we can get the non-dual, all the good non-dual stuff, but also like heal like whatever pathology is like deep in like the self system, I don't know. It sounds pretty good to me.
I hope so. I don't think you're stuck in your foot in your mouth at all. I think that makes a lot of sense. You said something earlier too, which was I don't remember precisely. It was something about not wanting to reinvent the wheel. And it occurred to me the other day. I think this is sitting in my drafts right now. But it occurred to me the other day that like renewing your faith, whatever that is, renewing your spirituality, your beliefs, your tradition, your connection to the land, and reinventing the wheel look a lot alike, because you're having to take you're taking the frame of something and you're applying it to your context. And so you, in a lot of ways, you do have to see, you have to not understand something in the abstract, right? Or you're still encountering it outside of yourself. You have to really see, how does this manifest in my context? And a lot of times that's gonna look like reinventing the wheel. Like,
Yeah, definitely. Like, I think someone on Twitter made this point, which I totally agree with. It was maybe Jake O. And he may or may not have been drawing upon Chapman or critical rationalism or a bunch of other traditions. But something like value decays or something like that. Like in order to sort of preserve whatever's good in the abstract over time, I think it does have to be continually brought back into contact with, the actual conditions on the ground. And I do think there is a way in which that looks like reinventing the wheel. Periodically, it sort of has to be like someone needs to be able to deconstruct kind of like the whole thing, and kind of through like a keyhole kind of get it all back, but like in a refreshed, renewed version, language or something. Or not, because I'm totally just like selling my own material kind of.
no, good. It's your podcast.
But yeah, I don't know. Like, but at the same time, there's a way in which possibly my stuff doesn't make sense without reference to like the Western canon, without reference to like the Eastern canon. So like there's this tension between like rebirth and renewal, and recontextualization and rewriting and reinventing the wheel. But somehow that still has to dialogue with everything that came before, because that's what grounds it or something. I don't know.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, of course. There's no, yeah. How could we sever our connections to those things? We're not different than those things, and we're just grown out of them in our own ways. I wonder, what I would love would be to figure out how to make an institution that teaches people the tool set to do what you did.
Yeah, and the document tries to do that, encourages people to do that. Yeah, I think all of like the best stuff tries to confer like generativity to.
Yeah.
So that sounds fucking awesome to me. Yeah.
A generative spiritual institution that renews itself. Yeah, that'd be pretty incredible.
Yeah. I think one of the things that's hard is that generativity can be tremendously costly. Like it takes like real time, real labor, food and water and shelter, and relationship capital and social capital, which get burned when you're kind of off in your cave. But yeah, I mean, yeah, part of the original thing with my stuff is I wanted like people to, write their own kind of without, loss of complexity or detail, but completely different words, but still pointing back at the same thing. And then there could be like a big library of meditation instructions, and yeah, and it could still happen. It's kind of happening around the edges. Yeah.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, I'm not sure. There's also there are people who are doing really interesting stuff in like ritual craft, and like so many people are not writing this stuff down. They're not writing, I talk to friends. Sometimes I just talk to like random people who message me who are encountering extremely strange phenomena that they want to know from me, like, what is this thing? And I'm like, I have no, if you don't tell me the whole ritual and where you were and what time it was, how could I re-experience this thing? I don't know. But people are having these like sui generis, I don't know if I said that right. It's, very unique, sort of once off. Everything is unique and once off. But what I mean is it doesn't exist in the literature anywhere, and they're not writing it down. Right? They're not putting it out there, and I don't know how much we're losing because they don't have the tools.
Right. And like that might be particularly tragic in this kind of day and age because of like all the mixing that's happening. We're sort of in the like, mixed martial arts era of like spiritual practice. It's like I don't follow mixed martial arts, so I'm probably gonna get this totally wrong, but it was kind of like, all right, well, like which martial arts is the best? And, they sort of got to find out. And of course, like, it's not like a real fight and there's rules sort of. And so it's like not.
Right. Yeah. Best for what? Yeah.
Yeah. It's not like a perfect whatever, but they, it evolved very quickly is my understanding from a distance. And I think, it's only like however many years ago that Google Books, Amazon, and worldcat.org, where people were, and then Twitter, where just all this stuff sort of got to be able to start mixing. And there's probably like a ton of experiments have like come and gone that we sort of don't like have a record for. And like, other stuff will take the places of those things, but yeah, like probably a bunch of crazy stuff, like monstrous and horrible, but also like beautiful and like brilliant have just kind of come and gone, and like we don't, it'll leave ripples, but we've lost the details or something.
Yeah,
that's, I don't know, it's like too bad.
It's a monstrous possibility.
Yeah. Yeah. Have there been any, I can think of maybe one or two threads on my side, like is there any like conversation reboot that you want to do, like anything that we forked in one direction but you wish we'd forked in another direction, or anything that
I'm surprised we went into the institutional, given what I know about you and what I know about me, and that just must be something that's sort of brewing.
Yeah, I might have been or I said I might have been in a mood, or you were in a mood, or we're both in a mood, or yeah, I don't know.
I'm not sure. Yeah, I think I'm a lot more likely to be a John the Baptist type. Ultimately, I think I'll be happier out there. Part of it is I'm really quite a disagreeable person. And I like people a lot, but I'm just it's just me. Yeah, so I don't know. I think I expected, I'm glad we talked about some of the things I expected we were going to talk about, which was like, I do think that, I think a lot of the things people, when it comes to technical details of meditation or blockages in meditation practices, it will surprise people to find out that the problem is in the ego, and that they actually need to do some ego strengthening thing. That's like, they're like, wait a minute, I'm supposed to ignore that. And it's like, well, if it hurts so bad that you can't ignore it, then you've got to heal it, and then you can we can move on. Yeah, so I guess I'm glad we touched on these things, and yeah, it feels good. Yeah, I was a little worried about coming into this because I was like, man, I know Mark has spent like 4 times the amount on the cushion that I have. I like was worried I was feeling a little intimidated. You're very easy to talk to.
Oh, I'm glad. I was anxious because you're sort of, it feels like you're kind of better integrated into like the, I don't know, teapot, Twitter or something scene. And part of the reason that I wanted to do these was both for just sort of personal relating reasons, but also like sort of practice for bringing in like sort of more and more high profile people. And so for whatever this is worth, you're like the most high profile person that I've like talked to on this thing. Take that however you will. So I was a little bit like so but you're easy to talk to as well for whatever.
That's good.
And if you'd like to be more disagreeable, I love that too. So
yeah, I don't. It kind of has to come up organically, but it comes up organically. Yeah.
Maybe I can try to piss you off in the
if you want to, sure. Yeah. Let's try to trigger each other and see if we can.
Yeah. No, that sounds good.
I did have a joke tweet about if I ever started a podcast, it would be like having spiritual people on and then finding something we disagree about and just having a knockdown drag out. Because most spiritual podcasts are like, hey, look how cool I am. And someone's like, oh yeah, that is cool. Like, I'm really cool too. And it's like, yeah, this is chill. And it's like, that's the whole thing,
Yeah, totally. No, I think the disagreements are kind of the most interesting stuff. But maybe tragically we agree on more than we disagree on. That's a cliche, but like, I don't know, we're having trouble finding stuff to disagree about. Maybe a thread that I was going to talk about. Oh yeah.
Yeah, no, I thought about it, which was the Western strip mining of wisdom traditions. I thought there was stuff to dive into there if you wanted to talk about it.
Yeah. So I've encountered this, I think, a little bit with my own material, and like also maybe I'm not sure if it's a good comparison, but like maybe with like Daniel Ingram has like encountered it to some degree as well. And like I almost don't feel like I can comment on it, barely in my own case even, because I sort of don't know what's happening underneath with like the politics, the sociology, like the internal power games or not, like what's good faith, what's bad faith. But I think he sort of got into trouble by like some people, one person, one sect of Buddhism, like didn't like that he was using, and I'm probably gonna get this wrong, I'm hedging like crazy here, that he was using words like arhat, or he was using technical language that was taken from this like particular tradition, possibly in this case Theravada, I'm not even sure, and making claims that asserted things using that technical language. And I think it even came down to like, I think they were like, yeah, we don't care what you do, just like don't use our words or something like that. And like there's maybe a similar thing going on with my stuff. And again, like, is it like one or two people, or like if I talk to more people, it'd be exactly the same thing. And it was like, so like I'm not even sure kind of in my own situation, but people were saying that wait, I want to get really try to get more accurate here. One person was saying that it's like I was like trying to claim too much or trying to subsume too much, or like both saying like my stuff was better, but also like referencing very specific things in other traditions that I was like better in relationship to, or something like that. And so anyway, like there's that. And then also like just today, I was, again, just one person was like critiquing another person's kind of we were talking about like unbundling or like taking stuff from older traditions and kind of doing things with it in isolation. And yeah, I'm not sure how to navigate that. Like surely something in there is legitimate, and even like that, saying that is like super arrogant possibly. um um I want to say something like, I think it's like okay to like lift and strip mine and take and appropriate and recontextualize, and like maybe like even use language in like new and incorrect ways. But it's maybe like and it's like okay up to the point where it starts to hurt the people that it was like appropriated from, or something like that, where if you take somebody else's language and like use it in a way that popularizes it, but then it like warps the original meaning of the terms, or like you benefit from a X thousand-year-old memeplex, but that benefit is like to the detriment of who you're benefiting from or something. Like I have like a very intense bibliography in my material, but beyond the books, they're like living, breathing communities, and just maybe there's a better way to kind of integrate with, talk to something. Sometimes it's critiquing, which I think is good, and other times it's just like taking, and maybe that's bad. So yeah, I don't know. That's some rambling. If that was, yeah. I don't know.
Yeah,
Thanks for letting me monologue there. I don't know. Yeah.
of course. Thanks for telling me what you think. I hear a lot going on in that, and I hear a lot of well, there's like a guilt, and there's also like I really hear a desire to do things right when I hear you talk about it.
Yeah.
And I think that's important. The crux of many of these critiques are people elbowing and jostling for status, and making these critiques can elevate you in some people's eyes, and social media is a coliseum in a lot of ways, and I don't take most of it seriously, because I think you can kind of tell when somebody just wants to score a point, and when somebody is really protective of something. In the case of Daniel Ingram, I think that he agreed to stop referring to himself as an arhat.
Really? I'm not on top of it. Wow. Okay.
I think that's the case, or he withdrew a claim to the title or something like that. I'm probably repeating hearsay right now because I can't give you a source, but I believe that's what happened. And I think Theravada's, or the people who objected on behalf of Theravada Buddhism, were like, arhat is a culturally constructed term as much as it's a religious term, and divorcing the techniques from the culture means that you're going to get the techniques, but whatever you are is a product of your culture and the techniques, not a product of our culture and the techniques, and so you should use a different word for it, which is like fine. It's okay. It's a little technical, but if somebody doesn't want to water that down, it's like if somebody was I claim, I don't know I'm not sure how to make an equivocation here or how to make like an analogy. I can understand, there are so many things. So Zen's a good example where there are a lot of Western practitioners of Zen who will say things like, it's not a religion. You do not have to practice it like a religion. You can just use the techniques and then that's true Zen and et cetera, so forth. And it just misses how like richly Chinese the Chen tradition is and how richly Japanese the Zen tradition is. And how many things are just unique to that and how much cultural knowledge you need to even sort of understand the techniques. If you're just abstracting them, which is itself sort of like the highest modernism, right? Like, we're going to just abstract the techniques and do them here. What you have is something that's a lot closer to Japanese martial arts, floral arrangement, the tea ceremony. These are, so Miyamoto Musashi is my hero. This was a guy. Are you familiar with him?
Not super well. Yeah.
He was a homeless samurai in the 16th century who just didn't care about anything except sword fighting. It's all he wanted to do. And when he hit the limits of sword fighting, he realized like, oh, there's a whole dimension to this that's spiritual. And there's no way I can hit my peak if I don't start spiritually training. So he started chasing after Zen masters, being like, will you teach me? And of course they were like, no, go away, right? Like, I have nothing to teach you, and etc. The point of it was that this guy, ultimately Musashi, achieved what we would think of as classical or traditional enlightenment, and he did it through a completely self-assembled system using Zen principles. So the fact that he's from Japanese culture made that possible and made that not appropriation. So good. I think that it's perfectly possible to do that here. I think it's perfectly possible to do that. I think in terms of like whether something is culturally appropriated, the question is, are you taking away the ability of Japanese Zen to define itself?
Yeah. I think there's something really important there. Like, is it fucking with people? Like, then there's probably something bad going on.
Yeah, and you should probably just like come up with a new terminology for it. You should,
Well, yeah. I mean, I'm like, well, shit, like that's so hard. Like that technical language, that's been built up over thousands of years. And it's like, well, okay, maybe too bad. Like, it's like you need your own language if it's like infringing on, other people to like define and whatever, I don't know. That's really hard.
And yeah, it is hard. It is hard. I think I'm not terribly sensitive to the sort of popular definition of cultural appropriation, which is like anytime a white Western person does something, it's bad. It's like, that's incredibly dumb. The Indian government spends upwards of $1 billion on exporting yoga per year. Like, they want this around the world, so it, it is hard. It's hard as hell. And it's something that, like, well, people in Western Zen talk about a lot. And of course there's many other traditions as well, which is like, how is this land tradition, is like, we don't have any indigeneity as white Western people, like, we're not really indigenous, right? Like, we practice an imported culture, on a country that that culture doesn't point to directly. Like, we circumcise children and there's no sand. Do you know what I mean? It's like, this is like this makes no sense. This makes a lot of sense in the desert. It doesn't make any sense in a taiga or a temperate region, physically,
Sure.
which is not, I'm not Just not to pass judgment, just that it's not in contact with the land here, right?
Yeah, no,
And so we, taking those principles and then building, it has to be built out of our context. It has to be built out of our land. But anytime anybody does that, what do you do about the fundamental displacement of the Western person? Like, what do you do about the fact that we do not have communion with the land, and we don't have communion with the calendar? We don't, we're just not rooted, landed people. And so how do you build a spirituality from scratch? Anything we do is going to be a product of mind, right?
Yeah. Interesting. And then you have like weird reverberations where I think David Chapman, drawing on a book that I forget, was making the point that like Buddhism like looks a lot more rational, or was sort of reskinned to make it more palatable to Westerners.
100%.
So then like that gets like super crazy. But also like fundamentally, like, up to some sort of little bit of like genetic drift or something like that, it's like it's still like all the same playing field. Like we're sort of the same, up to some sort of cultural structuring, like we're encountering the same phenomena in body mind, and whether it's coherence therapy or IFS, or noting meditation, or perfect parent practice, or guru work, some of what's being evoked is like practice specific, but it's like it's the same playing field, and like you can critique what's good and bad about IFS and what's good and bad about noting, and one is more appropriate in some context than the other. But it's like, how do we kind of talk about these things if we're not drawing upon words and language from other traditions? And I say like same playing field. I say a lot, like whether you're playing soccer or like American football or whatever, it's like you can do it on the same grassy field, which is body mind or whatever, which is a term that's borrowed from it's like it's really fucking hard. It's really fucking hard. I don't know.
It's really hard. Yeah. I don't know. No, I don't, nobody, there's, we I'm not sure how to solve this problem, because if you know that there's no independent origination, then you're expecting something to originate here that's somehow divorced.
Yep.
It's just not going to happen.
Totally. Yeah.
I think what we would have to try and do, one of the last things, this is, I guess, just kind of a personal aside, and I don't know how much this contributes to a broader thing. My mentor and I had something of a falling out a couple of years ago, mostly around what he was asking me to do and my responsibilities to my family. He's kind of an old school Zen guy, that was like, if your family is in the way of enlightenment, then your family's got to take care of themselves, and ultimately that's good for them and whatever. And I'm just like, not in the middle. No, like not, I mean, I'm not, certainly not in the middle of pandemic lockdowns. And like, I had my own reasons, and I was like, it felt like it was profoundly bad advice. But one of the last things he told me was like, you need to finish your bless RFE, you need to go to the mountains, you need to finish the work. And what he was recommending, and not in these words, but fundamentally, I think what he wanted me to do was a Zarathustra type thing, where it's like, you got to go up there and you got to empty everything out, and you've got to build it from your experiences, up in the mountains. You just got to like put it together. And of course, you're going to do it with the tools, the internal tools that we've got, and what is a human being without connection to the collective unconscious, or to a lifetime of education. Of course we're going to have those things, and you and I have probably the best in history.
Google Books, Amazon, Twitter, blogs, communities of practice,
Zoom with each other, so all that's going to be present. But I think if what you're saying, everything you're saying is connected here. I think that's the big concern. And I think that if I were to go say I used Zen principles or I used Theravada principles, and this is what I discovered, and it was something that was, if it was living Dharma and it was not abstracted, rational, idolatrized, packaged for sale Dharma,
Yep.
then I can't imagine if it's Dharma, I can't imagine any practitioner saying, well, it was appropriated and thus I rejected.
Yep. Yep.
Dharma is Dharma, you know?
Yeah, yeah, totally. And like this is some Ken Wilber like integral stuff, but like I think if you take various things and like make a map, you can like use the map to critique things that are on the map. And it's like I think morally, ethically, technologically, like even as like advances have been made, like paid for in blood, and like new pathologies have borne that are like shot through of like all of Western history and whatever. It's like that there have been like moral, technological, like social advances, and like I think critiques on like religious structures and institutions that I think are legitimate. Uh, so it's like if you'll if you'll pardon me, like I think your mentor was wrong about like telling you to leave your family.
Me too.
And so it's so how do we kind of respect the past and the living past and the present and like contemporary communities of so, and also while like taking the good stuff and advancing the good stuff and paying it forward and back, and without being really fucking arrogant and
when arrogant to who? There's to some, and I know that just sounded arrogant, and what I'm going to say sounds arrogant, but America is on top of the world, and we're on top of Western culture, and we dominate absolutely everything, in large part because our culture churns the new so powerfully. And it's like that's what makes us so like tacky and chaotic, and also like that's the that churn, that friction and churn and chaos is what keeps producing this this light, and there's nothing we can do with our educations, no matter, like, there's no purity of intention that we can achieve that's going to put us out of the reach of criticism. And there's no purity of intention we can achieve, or rightness of action we can achieve, that isn't going to have negative externalities in some way or another. And that's not to say, that's not a blanket justification for anything that we do. Just that I think if the price to pay for helping people in the best way we can with the tools we've got is guilt, then guilt is manageable.
Yeah, I think it just does speak to that interconnectedness, nothing, it's sort of a cliche, but like nothing we do is like sort of disembedded. Like I know very little about history, but like American hegemony or something, like it's feedback loops. Like it's all just sort of there are consequences that will reverberate for like millennia if the world like doesn't destroy itself, and positive things too, but yeah, I mean like guilt, guilt is a signal of something unprocessed, to bring it back to kind of meditation land. And if one feels it, if I feel it, if you feel it, if somebody feels it, then there's some kind of information there. And we engage with it as it comes up, and so on and so on. So
Right, definitely. Yeah. I know that I guess what I mean is that you can the part of me that often feels guilty is the part of me that is identified with America, that is identified with Western stuff, identified with epistemic rationality, these kinds of things. And these critiques, a lot of these critiques are valid and they're fair, and to the best of our ability, it's like worth incorporating. But the guilt doesn't, like, I'm not sure that it's a guilt that can be processed so long as these structures exist in their current form. Or I don't think there's like an ideal guilt-free nation, or
yeah,
it's like people are too complicated. Like, I can certainly, guilt is information if it's in your personal context, if it's in your organic context, and sometimes it points to things, maybe the way that you're living is I certainly have a lot of guilt about the consumption habits and these sorts of things is not as good as they could be. And but those are like things that I have responsibility over. But there is a point at which I just don't have responsibility unless I say, you know what, I'm just not going to do this. And in some cases, that's a good idea, right? Like we don't need to go strip mine the jhanas to try to help people perfect themselves, right? Like, that's trying to perfect yourself is the whole problem. Right. It's so some of these things are make sense. Don't do that, but like in terms of like just a free, just a guilt about the tools themselves. I'm just not sure it's separable. I'm not even sure it's processable. I think it just comes with it.
yeah, that makes sense. I mean, there's inherent tensions in just sort of existing or something, and those tensions will never be fully resolved except in like nirvana or something.
Yeah, the Pure Land. Yeah.
Yeah. And like just doing anything is gonna ruffle some feathers somewhere, and and so we just sort of do the best we can and like repair on the fly, and like try to listen to people and cultures. And there's something else I wanted to say.
Yeah, but short of like abdicating power, there's just nothing you can do to absolve yourself of that responsibility. And there's a huge difference between medical malpractice and breaking somebody's rib because you're giving them CPR.
Yep. Yeah, totally. I think it's important to own it, to act with eyes wide open, and then and then repair in a way that is over time, in a way that is like recognized by the party that's hurt as actual compensation.
Yeah.
And sometimes and sometimes their grievance is not is illegitimate in some way, and sometimes like the person doing the harm made a horrible mistake. And yeah, I think it's just a process. Anyway,
that one's hard to talk about in the abstract without getting into like specific situations and specific examples and stuff. Yeah.
Well, cool. I'm sure that we've left many stones unturned, and I'm curious about other things in your background and your spiritual practice and stuff. And So maybe at a future time we could chat again and poke at you know, all the things that we left out of this conversation and stuff.
Yeah, I'd be stoked.
Thank you for kind of being willing to sort of really kind of reach at the edge of both of our ability to like articulate like uncomfortable things and possibly put like foot in mouth and stuff. Uh, yeah, thanks for being willing to kind of go there and stuff.
Yeah, you got it. Thank you.
Thanks. Well, yeah, just logistics wise, like if there's any, I'll send you the transcript of this. And if there's anything that you want to cut out, we can chop it out of the recording before putting it online. If you want the raw files to do whatever you want with, I can give you the raw files. And if we're both cool with it, we can post it online and we can also scrap it, whatever we want. So
yeah, yeah, sounds good.
okay, cool. Well, it was a pleasure to speak with you.
Yeah, and you too.
Yeah, good energy, good dynamics. So that's really always a pleasure. So yeah.
All right.
Do you have any final thoughts, words, anything, or we can call it here?
Maybe not for this recording, but I want to grill you a little bit more, probably just over text, about the right kind of people. So if I do encounter, you know, if I've got a client who needs specialized help, like, you know, I'd like to kind of get your expertise so that if somebody really does get hooked up on a technical thing, I can be like, I got a guy, you know.
Cool. Yeah, that sounds awesome. And yeah, I'm interested in learning more about your practice and coaching as well, so that I can kind of refer in the other direction too. So
Cool. All right, I'll
cool.
message you on the side.
Okay, sounds good. All right, bye.
Bye, Mark.
Yeah.